Hey, Puentistas, what's up? Welcome back. A lot of you know that we've got our research argument essay coming up. It's a multi-step process. I've looked through your thesis statements or topics and your outlines, and in general, they're looking really good. Some of you still need to get that work and some other work into me. Make sure you do that. Again, keep in touch too. Um, this is getting towards the end now. It was really hard for us to think about it at the beginning, but we are getting really close to the end of the semester, and I want to make sure that we complete what we need to complete so that we can move on and move forward. Um, I hope we all had a really nice and restful Thanksgiving, socially and pandemically safe one at that. Um, Things are going to get worse as far as that pandemic goes before they get better. If you haven't gotten your flu shot yet, get your flu shot. I got mine. The Band-Aid's gone. Never mind. So one of the important things that we're going to look at today in this video will be how to avoid dropped quotations. And drop quotations are something that happen when we're first starting to learn how to incorporate outside sources into our writing, when we've got to use, somebody else's words or research or ideas to get our point across. So this would be a good thing to take some notes on, and of course you can pause it whenever. What you really need to know, the big takeaway is that when you're using an outside source, and really to be safe, if it's quoted or paraphrased or even summarized, introduce that information with a signal phrase. And there are going to be three parts to the signal phrase, and I don't think I actually put this in to the slideshow, so I'm going to tell it to you verbally. One is the author's name. Oh, you know what? I'll do this. I'm going to put you through one right here. Here's a signal phrase that could come right before what you're going to be speaking about, or whatever that quotation or summary point is going to be. According to Harvard political scientist Robert Putnam, that would be one. As former Secretary of Labor Robert Reich states, he's still around, he's still doing his thing. In the words of history professor Cornel West, a lot of you guys remember him because he was the dude who spoke at the Puente Motivational Conference. Is that Kismet or what? Is that destiny? Maybe. Or James Kunstler, the author of The Geography of Nowhere, observes that. Now, all these signal phrases let that reader know, hey, I'm going to use somebody else's ideas or somebody else's exact words in my writing right after this. It's kind of like a little introduction you're giving to one friend about a different friend. So it helps avoid that problem where people just drop in a quote and don't give any context for it and give no introduction. Now, the three items that you need to have for a successful signal phrase are these: author's name, a claim to authority, and finally, some version of says, writes, or thinks. That's it. Now, the name is pretty obvious, right? If we look at this first one, it's Robert Putnam, right? Now, a claim to authority is basically some piece of information that's going to make your reader, make your audience want to believe that source. Okay, and so this guy, Robert Putnam, is a political scientist at Harvard. And Harvard's a pretty well-known university in the United States, very high reputation. So that makes that person's authority seem like something that make you want to believe that information. And here at the beginning, according to, that's really a version of says, writes, or thinks. That's kind of like a middle advanced version of it. My feeling about rough drafts is write it out as simply and as straightforward as possible. Don't worry about word choice or variety too much that first time. Just weld the big pieces of the car together. You can go back and add that variety and add that flavor a little bit later, but right now the big important point is making sure you get everything in there. So Remember, there are three parts of it: name, claim to authority, says, writes, or thinks. Now, I want you to go ahead and pause the video and see if you can find them in these next three. Okay, I'm going to pretend like you already paused it, you unpaused it. Some of you may be just like, I'm going to freestyle this, I'm going to do this in one take like Jay-Z. That's fine too. So here's this first one. This first one that I asked you to look at. The name is always the easiest, right? Boom. Robert Reich? Go back. Okay. What's the claim to authority? He's the former Secretary of Labor. What's that version of says, writes, or thinks? That's states. All right. Look at this next one, number 3. We've got Cornell West is the name. History professors that claim of authority. In the words of is another way of saying says, writes, or thinks. So all of these are very legitimate ways. And like I said before, it's kind of like when you introduce one friend you have to another friend that you have, even though they don't know each other. And you're going to be kind of like, hey, Big Mikey, this is Bubba. Bubba's the guy that can eat all those pancakes. Bubba, this is Big Mikey. Big Mikey, he's the guy that has the classic big wheel collection in his backyard, or whatever the case is, right? You're letting people know who they are and why you should be impressed by them. Now, some of you are kind of like already thinking about synonyms, having that word order, that word variety in there. And again, I still think that's a paint job issue down the road. But, verbs such as these: argues, contends, points out, notices, notes, all of these can be used for that third element that says, writes, or thinks. Notice there are subtle differences in those meanings, so keep that in mind. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what things are like without the signal phrase. Here's the incorrect form. Suppose you're writing an essay about Americans and compulsive spending, like out of control consumerism. It's hard to believe right now because we're in this very economically kind of scary and uncertain time. But when the economy's going well, people are like, woo, making it rain, the money's flowing, right? And sometimes people get so caught up in consumption and consumerism that they get themselves into trouble. It becomes this compulsive activity for them. Let's take a look at this incorrect form. Suppose you've got this topic sentence at the top. Americans suffer from wanting too many non-essential consumer items, period. Now here comes the quotation. Greed has infected our society. It is the worst infection. End quote. Then we have parentheses, last name, page number, parentheses, period. Now notice this also gives you an idea of how do you do the parentheses citation. Okay? But notice how that quote is just basically dropped right in there. Blang! Right? We don't have any idea who this Benjamin person is. Is it Benjamin Button? The old man that ages backwards into a little baby? There's some other Benjamin that we need to know about? We don't even know. So that's where the signal phrase comes in. It helps your reader understand why we should believe this person's quotation. Now, here's the correct way of doing this with the drop quotation right there in yellow. Americans suffer from wanting too many non-essential consumer items, period. United States Surgeon General Regina Benjamin notes, greed has infected our society. It is the worst infection. So, the Surgeon General is the highest medical officer in the president's executive branch of government. So this wasn't under our current president, Trump. This was someone who worked under Barack Obama. But here you've got a person that you know is a medical authority, and they're talking about greed. And they're talking about it as it's some kind of infection, as kind of, a mental or psychological infection in a way. So you're going to be more likely to believe this because of this signal phrase. So that's the big point about those. And wow, that was something that I was going to have you do. What you could do for practice here is practice making a signal phrase using this information and putting that signal phrase in front of the quotation. So like the first one, you would say something like, economist Juliet Shore observes, comma, TV shows a very inflated standard of living relative to what the true standard of living of the American public is. And then at the end, you would put parentheses, Shore, 94, parentheses, period. Just like we did here with Benjamin, right? Notice I use that same name twice here. Technically speaking, if you put the name in the signal phrase, you only need a page number in parentheses. But I'd rather have you be more careful and be a little bit redundant than try to take shortcuts and maybe accidentally leave out that name altogether. You know, we can tighten things up a little bit later in 1B. But for right now, I just want to make sure that you've got that signal phrase, and then at the end of that quotation or that summary or that paraphrase, you've got parentheses, last name, page number, just the number. Notice you don't need a P or the word page or PG or anything, parentheses, and boom. Notice this period zips all the way to the outside. That seems really strange, but that's exactly how it works. I'm going to go ahead and leave this video right here for this, and I'm going to then move us on into talking about the differences between direct quotations and summaries and paraphrases, and then we'll take a little bit of a closer look at an example student essay. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.